Mulligan Stew Podcast. I'm Terry David Mulligan. There's two groups of you out there. There are the Canadians who listen, and there are people around the world who listen to the Mulligan Stew Podcast and may not know who Blackie and the Rodeo Kings are. We're going to give you as much detail as we can with links with this podcast. But Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, for every land out there, there's one band that represents who they are as people. Canada is blessed with a number of bands, a number of artists. Gordon Lightfoot, Leonard Cohen, Joni Mitchell, Neil Young. Even though they moved on, they were still Canadians at heart. Blue Rodeo, for one. Blackie and the Rodeo Kings for another. Like if Blue Rodeo are the Beatles, Blackie and the Rodeo Kings are absolutely positively the Stones. Early badass Stones. And they're driven by three singer-songwriters who found a way to work together and still get to express who they are in their own solo careers. Colin Linden, who is an amazing guitarist, arranger, songwriter, singer, producer, creator. He's worked with all of the greats, all the way up to Bob Dylan. And he's in Nashville. In Ontario is Tom Wilson, who years ago said to me, I've discovered, Terry, that I was adopted. And in fact, my mother was a Mohawk. Mulligan, I'm a Mohawk. And he has been telling that story ever since, very proudly. Wrote a book about it. There's a second book coming. I'm sure there's going to be a documentary and a life story on Tom Wilson. By the way, as we were doing this interview on Zoom, Tom, who's an artist as well, was painting a paddle that would be displayed as part of an exhibition that he's doing in early September. And he said, as he explains in the interview, I have to do two things at once. I have to talk to you and paint at the same time if I'm ever going to get this done. So, Tom Wilson, what a guy. The one missing is Stephen Fearing, who actually is closest to me. I'm in Mill Bay, Vancouver Island. He's in Victoria, Vancouver Island. However, this summer, most of it has been spent for him, for Stephen Fearing, in the Maritimes. I was told he was teaching. Nobody ever explained what he was teaching, but he's instructing, he's mentoring. And this weekend, they all get together at Bear Creek Music Festival in Alberta. And then we'll see more of them later on. You know, when it's cold enough, you can freeze your fingers on guitar strings. Then they'll tour. Blackie and the Rodeo Kings have a new album called Oh Glory, Lost Those Blues Again. And they all write, they all sing, they all take part in all of this, except because of COVID, they had to do it from three different areas of the planet. Anyway, we're going to have a conversation now. By the way, there comes a time, I think it's the second interview segment, and I asked the guys about Buffalo Girl that Tom had written. And then, to my surprise, Tom, as he's talking, looks into his iPhone and pulls out the demo version that he sent to Colin in Nashville. And then Colin starts looking at his phone and plays back his version of that same song that came in. You, of course, if you get the album, can listen to the finished version. Great fun. I hadn't had that happen before. This is a session with Blackie and the Rodeo Kings, Colin Linden, Tom Wilson, Stephen Fearing. Will catch up with him at a later date. This is the Mulligan Stew Podcast. You can find the details at mulliganstew.ca and the video version, which is pretty funny. The video version can be found on the Terry David Mulligan YouTube channel. Enjoy. I'm Terry David Mulligan. This is Mulligan Stew on CKUA Radio and the Mulligan Stew Podcast. Our guests for you and I are just Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. I'm just going to do roll call here. Stephen Fearing? No. Stephen Fearing?
No.
Colin Linden. Colin Linden. Mr. Linden?
No.
White Courtesy Telephone. Thomas Wilson.
Yes, I'm here.
All right. And listen, we know that Stephen is teaching on the opposite coast, the East Coast. And we know that Colin's in Nashville, and things get goofy down there when you have a recording studio. You never know who's going to walk in.
It's kind of true.
But we have found you doing what I admire most, two things at once.
Yeah, well, I have so many children, and now I have so many grandchildren that the only way to survive is by knowing how to, I guess, what they call multitask. Although I hate that term. But don't worry about that, Terry.
And what do you let me see what you've done. Is it a paddle?
I'm working on a paddle right now.
Nice.
Oh, there's Colin.
Show Colin.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome to this CKUA Mulligan Stew podcast. Love-in.
It is a love-in.
By the way, I saw a quote go by today from an artist I don't quite know. I know the name, and I won't say the name, but he has a new album coming out, and he's talking about this, talking about that. And one of the lines that came out was, "I believe there is no more romance in the world. Romance is a lost art." I mean, and we're dealing with the lost art of making love. Stephen has written on the new album, "Oh Glory." How are you feeling romantically these days, Colin?
I am so incredibly in love with my wife, who we've been together for 39 years.
Give him the full
every
name.
day, her name is Janice Marion Curry Alexander Powers. That's
right.
all what her.
That's right.
And I am so totally in love with her that I could not imagine. I feel like we said back in 1999, our band, like I'm a king of love because I'm so in love. So I feel romantic every day.
And Tom?
Yeah. You know what? That's a terrible thing to say. This artist who might be a friend of mine, but you got to believe in something, man. And you know what? The world isn't giving us much to believe in. We have to believe in what our hearts can offer the world, Terry. That, of course, being romance is a major part of that.
Are you in love? Are you romanced? How are you?
I'm romanced. I'm inspired by my kids who are both in love. I'm in love every day. I kind of feel like Colin. I haven't been with my wife as long as he's been with Janice, but you know what? I know exactly what he's been talking about all these years when he's talked about being so in love with his wife.
And as Womack might say, I don't know how that sounds over Zoom, but that's "I'm in Love" written by
That sounds pretty good.
But Wilson Pickett sang it.
Boys, you're at Bear Creek today,
Yep.
taking the main stage at that festival. First of all, are you happy to have festivals and stages to play on? And how you feel about returning to Alberta again?
Well, first of all, it's nice to get out of Canada once in a while. So getting to Alberta is going to be a lot of fun, I think. You know what? I got asked to do Bear Creek, I guess about 5 years ago, Terry, and I had no idea anything about the festival. I didn't even know. I thought it might just be, a couple pieces of plywood and a trainer PA with a microphone hanging from a coat hanger. I didn't know what I was getting into, and it was a fantastic festival, a great experience. That year, Katie Lang was playing there. Man, Ashley McIsaac was there. I was there, and it was kind of a family. It felt like family there, This year, we're gonna be sharing the same stages with people like Steve Earle and Serena Ryder. So more family.
How about you, Colin Linden?
I am so unbelievably stoked to be playing. It was last year, 2021, ended up a really, really busy year in the studio, and it was great. But I was missing playing so much, and we were anticipating that we would be going out beginning of this year.
Yeah.
And when that all got shifted around, I just was it really sunk me. So I'm so happy to be out playing. And of course, Bear Creek should be a fantastic.
There you go. Listen, I know that you used your time well. You wouldn't exactly sit around and twiddle, you guys. You'd keep working, Tom, Colin, you'd keep writing and recording. Was it using the technology of today? These songs sound like they were pulled together beautifully. Was it a grind, or is it just a false impression on my part?
Hi, honey. I'm just on a live radio interview. Everything's happening here, Terry. Everything is happening here. My apologies. My wife just walked in. My mother's calling me on the phone. People have absolutely no respect for the media anymore. So I'm sorry. But we were talking about the songs. Well, the songs came together. I've talked about this before, and when I think about the collection of songs on this record, we have been respecting the ceremony and the celebration of faith in one another and faith in higher powers. And this record is kind of a testament to that. Well, Oh Glory, for one thing. I mean, the title track, Oh Glory, is, it rolls down a crooked road, that's for sure. And it's noting the celebration that goes along. The fact that Colin took the H out of the Oh Glory, I love that. No One to Turn To But My Brother is absolutely heart-wrenching and beautiful, and it's a celebration of love of family and love of spirit.
What do you think, Colin?
I think that this is the way it is with the whole record. This is a record of us reaching out to one another, I think, in so many ways.
Wow.
And I got on a roll where he would send me, we missed each other so much. And I think that is one of the things that has driven this body of work. And I think that a lot of stuff has happened to all of us, but Tom and I got in a groove where he would send me this beautiful piece of music. Sometimes it would be a couple verses in a chorus, sometimes a verse in a chorus, sometimes a verse, and he would just say, "Have at it." And it was like he was pitching these strikes because they were so beautiful, and everything stopped when he sent them to me. And nothing else mattered except for me finishing that song and recording it that day.
You mean like Ghost of Love?
Absolutely. He sent it to me, and I thought, this is fantastic. And I immediately finished doing whatever I was doing, and the rest of the day became finishing this song and coming up with parts for it. And so much of what you hear on the record is that day, the day that we wrote the song. And then I'd send it to him, and he would sing it and knock it out of the park. And we actually have we have another album's worth of songs. We did so much.
Those are for the box set. We won't worry about that.
Yeah.
Tom, what part of Buffalo Girl did you send?
Me, I sent a completely different song. I didn't send a completely different song. It was snowing here, and I was thinking of all the times that I was kind of driving out of Buffalo, New York, trying to get myself back across the border into Canada back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, when I was still a child. And just talking about romance, the romantic notion of leaving one place and going to another, and identifying that place with all the love in your heart. Buffalo, I love Buffalo, New York. I love Hamilton, Ontario. I love working class places. But I sent a song. I sent the melody, and I sent the lyrics. And Colin opened up the email and read the lyrics and wrote his own melody to it. So it became a completely different song. So now, just like so many great writers, I get to have a Buffalo Girl #2, just like Bob Dylan had all those, Rainy Day Woman's number 1, 6, and 5 or something like that, So I now I get a Buffalo Girl #2. So that's the bonus from this. And also Colin just wrote a fantastic rock and roll song to what I had sent him. I don't know if he ever listened to what I really what I originally listened.
Actually, I listened to it, and I think I wrote the last couple verses and to it, and I thought that would be a beautiful song for us to do. And then I kind of forgot what it sounded like. I have a recording of it still, but when I read it, I heard this other approach to it, and that kind of hurled itself out of me, fully formed, just singing along with the words that mostly Tom had written and I had written a little of.
Wait a minute.
And I thought, this is something really cool, and it's different. And it felt, I just got very excited by it. And Tom said, sure. And I mean, the other version of it is really beautiful too. And it does exist still. And
Tom,
it's kind of a wistful approach to it. But
I think I was thinking about what the hell to sing, but this is the writing demo.
When I get back, my buffalo girl, I'll take her north along the borderline, driving home in my old car. The Great Lakes whisper through the pines.
So that's the writing demo, Terry.
Wow.
and then
and then Colin did this.
sounds might be a little easier for
There you go.
It's just because I didn't have his music nearby, and I thought that up. So,
And I love the fact that you hurled a song, which is not something that you hear very often.
they have a way of pushing their way through you without you even expecting.
You birthed them, yeah. Here's the thing. I'm going to ask you about a couple of tracks that are kind of intriguing me, because I don't want to get all hung up on the tracks, because we'll keep playing them. We'll find out what they are over the.
And we haven't even started talking about wine yet.
No, because that's the next interview. I got 6 bottles behind me. I Sleep Like a Fugitive is the one that all three of you wrote. Who came in with the first kernel of that?
Me.
Okay.
I was missing everybody so much, and the border was crossed. It was closed, and you couldn't cross it unless it was an emergency. And I felt so far away, and we were going through. I mean, the country I live in was going through a lot of stuff too. That kind of was frightening to Janice and me. And I wrote a lyric, and I felt like Stephen Fearing is, in so many ways, I think he is the voice of the lone guy sitting behind the wheel driving in the middle of the night. And I kind of thought that he would relate to some of the images, so I sent it to him, and he came up with really good music for it, and made the lyric better too, and added some stuff there. And we needed Tom Wilson to write the bridge, so sent it to him, and 45 minutes later it was perfect and back with us. So the song was birthed in a thousands of miles away from each other, but it still felt very much like a collaborative effort.
Wonderful. I got to ask you about this one, Colin. Stop and Listen. Great opening track. You've got Lonnie and Sam Chapman and Walter Vince in there. Colin, they're legendary guys.
They were a group called the Mississippi Sheiks, who were actually the first African-American artists to ever get their records advertised on white music charts.
Exactly.
Which they back then called hillbilly charts. And they were tremendous musicians from outside of Jackson, Mississippi. And they became tremendously popular. Sam was sort of the writer of the band in a lot of ways. And among the things that he wrote was Sitting on Top of the World. Standard.
Oh, yeah. What a song.
And they were very popular in the late 20s to mid 30s, when the bottom fell out of African-American recording for the time in the Depression. And Sam, I got to know Sam when I was 14 and he was 70 when I first met him. And I made his last record with him called Sam Chapman and His Barbecue Boys, me and Doc McLean. When I was 19 and Sam was 80, his last record, and it was the first record I played on. And I had been working a lot with T-Bone Burnett on a kind of an interesting project that introduced me to a lot of younger African-American artists who were based in other places in the South, and Alabama and Georgia. And I got my mind blown by some of these fantastic artists. And that was happening around the same time as George Floyd's killing. And so there are a lot of ideas going around. And I thought that Stop and Listen was relevant. There was something about it Sam showed me how to play it when I was 14, by the way. And I have a picture of me and him from that day, that very day, that he showed me that and it's right next to my console in our studio. Yeah. And I was looking at that and seeing what was going on in the world. And I thought, this is so relevant. I changed a few words to make it a little bit more pointed, but mostly it was just taking it from what they had done. And I wanted to make it, I just kind of was inspired to do it a different way. And then it was the furthest thing from my mind that it would be for Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. And I played it for Tommy, and he said, this has got to start our next record.
Hey.
And when he says that, I take him.
Yeah.
I take his word.
Get it in writing. Yeah, that's right. So Tom, I got to ask you about one more track here.
Yeah.
Grand River. Something like this doesn't just start in a moment. It starts with your life. Tell me about Grand River.
Well, the technical side of it, Terry, is that the Mohawks fought in the War of 1812 against the Americans, helping the British Army, and in return, Great Britain gave 5 miles on each side of the Grand River to the Mohawks, to 6 nations actually, that should never be touched, and that was Mohawk. That was indigenous land. And since they gave that, it slowly turned into Paris, Ontario, and Brantford, Ontario, and Kitchener, Ontario, and Caledonia, and Cayuga, and basically just got taken back by developers. It's continued to be sacrificed for the sake of prefab housing, and the land defenders on 6 nations have decided that that's enough, that not another foot is going to be taken, and they set up on where a housing development was being built by the Grand River. And, police showed up, started shooting rubber bullets at elders, and the fat-ass mayor showed up and wanted everybody taken away and put in prison. So I drove out a bunch of food. I went to the grocery store and bought, 15 of those roasted chickens and a bunch of fruit and vegetables and things, because these were families living on the land. And these terrorists, as the mayor of Caledonia called them, terrorists, when I went out there, it was a bunch of kids playing lacrosse in the field and people cooking, on open fires. And that was the terrorism that was being written about in the press. So I took food out and I went out there and played some songs. And a couple of weeks later, the OPP came and arrested me and took me away to be fingerprinted and photographed. I thought I was going for a facial and a manicure, but I actually wasn't. They were kind of serious about it. I think, Colin had just mentioned that, the times that we're living in can affect us so greatly as artists, and we don't necessarily have to sing traditional protest songs, and we don't need to be additional voices to CNN and Fox News and Twitter. As artists, we have the ability to be able to write about loving important things. And so, once again, in the spirit of prayer and ceremony and celebration, the song Grand River is making the positive point that we're all going back there. We're all taking that land, and we're doing it in the name of our loving mothers.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the words. Thank you for the music. I got to ask you about a couple of things before I run out of steam here, guys.
We can wear you down, Terry.
Yes, you can.
We've been wearing you down for decades.
Colin, have you heard Tom and Isque and Mother Love?
Yeah, fantastic. I hear a long way down on the Sirius XM radio at least once a day.
Okay. Well, if we can I'm wondering how you can find the balance between letting those two do what they created and Blackie and the Rodeo Kings getting out on the road. Is there a way through that?
There's never been an issue. I've never thought about that.
No, just thinking about time. Everybody's time, right?
Everybody, all things in good time. These days, it's harder to plan what you're doing for dinner, let alone what you're planning to do in 4 months. So I think whatever seems like it's rising to the level of doing something is great. I mean, one of the things that's enabled us to be a band for all this time, and one of the things that I think has been enabling us to move forward with everything, is to not put restrictions on what each other are doing or anything like that.
Of course.
Not be worried about that. I think that the record with Tommy Niskwe is beautiful.
Just for the audience,
actually, the song "Mother Love" was the first thing that we worked on during the pandemic. It was the first.
Yeah, that's right.
So tonight, Bear Creek. Good, great. Have a great gig. November 5, you come back to Calgary, the Bella Hall. November 7, Winspear in Edmonton. November 9, the Commodore. November 10th, the Royal in Victoria. And then you drive right by my house in Mill Bay to get to November 12th at the Port Theatre in Nanaimo.
Yeah.
Great.
Right. And you know what? You should jump on the bus with us. There's always a bunk for you on our tour bus. I am not getting on your bus.
No. And the last gig is a small soft-seater, December the 11th at the National Arts Center in Ottawa, where I'm sure Tom will have a few words to say to the assembled throng.
You know, I got things to say.
Yeah. Well, some of those people are living in the towns you mentioned. Guys, here's what I need to ask you about quickly. The state of music, given 2 years of pandemic and lockdown, and now stages are back out again. The value of music, how it can heal some, how it can drive people apart, how it can bring them together. What's going on in the world of music and your lives in it?
Well, that's a pretty tough question, yes, Terry. I mean, my job after all these years, you know, you were interviewing me, back when Junk House was having hits on the radio, Terry, and you know that was a different time, and we were different animals back then. And now, as artistic animals, our job is really just to try and make good art. So I think not only on the artist side, musicians are trying to make good art more now than ever and are more in control of that. And I think as an audience, people are able to find the art that resonates with them. I think we're like kind of an open book. We are untouched by the corporate world. I'm not being anti-corporate. I'm just saying we're untouched by, you know, the old bosses, you know, who were trying to get hits for us on the radio. Yep. Now we don't really care. Now we just try to write good songs. And isn't that what it was always all about, I guess?
Sure. Colin?
Well, I mean, it's amazing to be back out playing. It's I think that one of the things that this period of time underscores is that the people who love music and the people who make music really have a lot in common. And I think everybody's missed each other. And that is great to know that we're still out there a little bit with one another. And I think that's a fantastic thing. You know, it's gratifying to know that people care about what you do. I mean, it's gratifying to know that you are listening to what we're doing. You want to talk about it. Because you really do, you know, you feel over time, you take it for granted less and less, I think.
You know what song I'm going to leave with?
What's that?
I Will See You in the Morning, written by Colin and Janice Mary Rebecca Sherelle Powers.
That's close. Yeah. Thank you for leaving with that one, because most of it was written by my wife. I helped a little bit on the bridge, but she got it. She nailed it.
What does it look like now, Tom? Maybe see the paddle. Is the paddle done?
Oh yeah, the paddle's coming along. I got a show opening in September the 11th, and between now and then, I'm in Bear Creek. I'm in Newfoundland. Blackie and the Rodeo Kings go to the UK to do some shows over there. So I got a little bit of traveling to do. So I got to paint when I can. So thank you for allowing me that time, Terry.
You're welcome. And Colin, what do you got?
I'm learning. Because tomorrow, Janice and I are flying to Lubbock, Texas, and I'm going to be the musical director on a celebration of what would be Buddy Holly's 85th birthday.
last question. You say that to make a different album, to make Glory, Oh Glory, a different album. What's the difference? Where's the difference for you?
In a lot of ways, it was sort of built around something aside from everybody playing together. It was built from the song out in a lot of ways. And I think I mentioned earlier about some of the work that I had done with T-Bone in the summer of 2020, the first summer of the pandemic, that was so inspiring to me. So I had some different rhythmic ideas that we could base our songs around instead of just three guys playing guitars. I kind of thought that's a big part of what we do, but it doesn't have to be everything that we do. Maybe we can start thinking about things in a bit of a different way. And I wanted to, one of the things that I missed so much in not being out on stage was I just missed singing with Tom and Steven so much. So I wanted every song that, even if we were all in different places, I wanted every song to have something, you know, ideally a chorus that we could all sing. And it didn't always end up turning out that way for everyone, but the concept in terms of the songwriting was I wanted every one of us to be able to sing. I mean, the thing about being in a group, and I don't know if the other guys, you know, it's maybe a little different. I mean, Steven is so much of a solo artist. It's a little bit of a different, I'm sure he thinks of things a little bit differently. But to me, when you're part of a group, even if you're writing the song, you want the other guys in the band to feel like this is our song. This is our band's song. And so I wanted there to feel like, even though we were thousands of miles apart, that everybody could feel like these are our songs.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
Fantastic. It's wonderful to converse with you. Thank you for doing this. Okay, Terry.
Okay, buddy.
See you soon.
Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. Yes. Colin Linden in Nashville. Tom Wilson in Ontario. Missing from the interview, and truly missed, Stephen Fearing. And I'll catch up with him later. Enjoy the entire album. Go and get it. You're going to love it. Blackie and the Rodeo Kings. Coming up, interviews with Mario Buckley, Lake Street Dive, and more on the Mulligan Stew podcast. Thank you for subscribing. Appreciate it. Be safe out there.